Oh, okay. Let me get myself on camera and mute my.
I can't hear you.
All right, Doc, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I know we're a few minutes early, so I'm
That's
just going to set up so I could be able to actually see the comments from the live stream. So that'll take us
Gotcha.
about 1 second.
No problem at all. I'm setting up my screen and everything too, so I can have my notes right next to me.
Right, we have about 1 minute before we start. We already have 12 people watching. Hello to all of those who are viewing the live. We're going to have a lively discussion and celebration of Women's History Month. Uh, um, we're broadcasting live both on my personal YouTube channel as well as Axis Vits. So, yeah. So
Okay,
y'all get
great.
your questions ready. All right, we got folks saying good morning from Florida. All right.
Good morning. Oh, my Florida people, make sure y'all take this information with y'all and go advertise, go broadcast it, go
Yeah,
shout it in the street, go get a speakerphone, stand on your corner with this.
absolutely. Oh, we got good afternoon, Fatima, SA Bound from Florida. Intimilang Moloko. Peace. Y'all, my South African family know I have I am not the best with pronouncing names, but there's no excuse. If people can pronounce Schwarzenegger, and I might not have pronounced that right, they should
Man,
be able to pronounce all kind of names. Right.
I think people just know what we mean when we try to say Schwarzenegger, so they're like, okay, well, we with you.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Doc. So, family, it is Women's History Month. And we had this sister on, Dr. Alicia Fontenette, during our Black History Month celebration. And the conversation was so lively and so engaging. Um, After that, I said, Doc, we have to bring you back to have a discussion because at that time we were talking about Black women in popular culture. So
Mm-hmm.
it was an easy transition to come back for Women's History Month and kind of continue this conversation um, about Black women, feminism, womanism, and maybe explore the differences between that, understanding the dynamics between feminism, Black feminism, womanism, and I guess we could say maybe traditional gender ideologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be a lively conversation. I'm excited to have Dr. Lee. She is a New Orleans native, also a graduate of Dillard University, my DU. She is the executive director of the National Council of Black Studies, uh, and a professor. And, we are going to get right into it. So, Doc, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. Always a pleasure to not only work with the Center for the Study of African American Life and Culture, but also to always have lively conversation with a homie, having someone from, the boot, but more specifically New Orleans, right?
Right.
Just, seeing you doing big things and having you being on the continent, man, like it's every time I talk to you, I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to the continent, and I will be there soon, I promise you.
Come on home. Come on home. Well, Doc, I won't I know you have a presentation, then we'll get into our discussion.
Yes, yes. So welcome everyone again. Thank you for having me. And I'm gonna just get right into it, right? Like I'm gonna just go straight up and just say I understand and I respect Black women and women who identify as feminists. I understand what true feminism is and what it can be. But I also want to make sure that we're clear that when we talk about those who practice what we know as the traditional feminism, that it is indeed a racist ideology that claims to speak for all women, but continues to ignore the needs of women of color, Black women, while also suppressing our voices. I'm gonna just start off with that, right? That's why I found it so problematic when Beyonce came out with her self-proclaimed album, and when she performed it, she had in the background feminism, and all of a sudden we had all our Black girls running who idolized her to say, "Yes, I'm a feminist. I'm a feminist," not even knowing truly what feminism is. Now, true feminism, as I stated earlier, true feminism has the power to transform society. Yes, it does. But too often, what is advanced as feminism is actually what I would say white supremacy in disguise, right?
Mm.
And I'm going to say that because it could be called white feminism. And I'm going to say white feminism, it exists to promote the comfort and safety of middle class and affluent white women. So understanding when feminism started and we got Susan B. Anthony and all these other people, they were married to what would be seen as successful white men. Okay, let's just
Mm.
say that. And they feel left out, right? They're like, well, hey, I want to go to school. I want to do more than just be in the house and watch kids and look pretty and support you, right? So it was never about in its origins the condition of Black women, and it thought about the problems of Black women. That was not the case. It was these affluent white women who wanted to have equal access to success like their husbands, right? So at its core, and this is something that many people try to argue against, but at its core, feminism itself is a racist ideology that claims to speak for all women while still suppressing Black women's voices and other women's of color voices. And truth is, the priorities don't align because we have
Mm.
different issues. We are oppressed in different ways. Yes, as I tell my students, we could never take away a group's oppression, right? All women are oppressed under this ideology that we know as patriarchy. We understand that. But also understanding that white women benefit from their proximity to white male supremacy and their patriarchal norms, right?
Mm.
So white women have this proximity to power, and truth of the matter is they just want a piece of that power. They're not truly recognizing the needs of Black women and other women of color. So the only time that I would argue this, and usually I don't speak in all inclusiveness, like only or all, but I'm gonna say it this time. The only time traditional white feminism recognizes the voices of Black women and other women of color is only to further its own aims and appear inclusive.
Mm.
That's the only time, right? So when can we say that feminism truly represented properly addressing racial and economic intersectionality when we talk about experiences of sexism?
Mm.
Right? Like we really have to think about that. And another major issue with traditional feminism to me is that it rejects the idea that women can oppress that women can oppress others who are empowered, and in doing so replicates harmful unacknowledged social dynamic of the primacy as well as educated white voices, right? So many of my Black sisters, and including myself, I guarantee you that we can recount moments where white women have made us feel judged, like we are less than, cannot speak properly, we don't look a certain way. If we express our concerns, we're the angry Black woman trope again, right? So understanding that, how we're just simply trying to navigate ourselves and our bodies to stand up straight in this crooked room that was not built for us. But then because of a white woman's proximity to white men and that power, she knows she has the authority to also oppress us. But no, we don't do that as women. We're women, we're in solidarity. And I say bull crap, right? Like call it for what it is, because what we fail to want to remember when we think about enslavement, when we think about Ma'afa, is that we only focus on the white man. We only focus on his doings and his beliefs on the plantation and his practices. However, what many people are not understanding, that white women were just as cruel as their husbands on the plantation.
Mm.
Right? Understanding that it was white women during this time who also defined what it meant to be a woman when we think about the cult of true womanhood, right? What does
Right.
it mean to be a woman? A woman is clean, a woman is pure, she is seen. But at the same time, understanding that for black women, if I'm in the field on side of my man, baby, my hands look like yours. I'm dirty. I'm not clean. I don't sit like a lady. I don't talk like a lady because I'm not being educated like, mistress in the house, and and our ancestors that she has in the house who she's being harmed, who she's harming as well. Right. But we
Mm.
don't talk about the white women's contribution to the oppression of black people, but especially black women, understanding that she knew her husband was sleeping with us. And you think she
Mm.
was nice to us when she decided to have us in the house? No, she beat us too. And as a matter of fact, when husband died, she made sure she was more cruel to us and the children that we had with her husband. Right?
Mm.
So just understanding that. And one of the movies that I like to show my classes is 12 Years a Slave, because it truly was a great depiction of the role of white women on the plantation. Now, understanding that these are the same white women who go on to start feminist movements and ideologies. So you mean to tell me that we really want to believe that this was started with our
Mm.
needs in mind? No, right? So then even when we see this today, so let's not just say, oh, racial issues and inequalities with class. Let's go to something all women deal with: childbirth. Black women are
Mm.
dying in childbirth at alarming rates compared to that of white women. So let's just bring it there, right? And that's just one quick example I want to give. When we talk about the maternal mortality rate for black women, it's 4 times higher than that of white women. And this even includes middle class and upper class black women, right? Even Serena Williams came out last year, was like, yo, I almost died because my doctor ain't listening to me. And I'm a
Mm.
millionaire. I'm Serena, right? And the US spends more money on childbirth, than anywhere else in the country, right? So, but truth of the matter is, it is safer for a black woman to have a baby in sub-Saharan Africa than in the modern hospital in Louisiana, Georgia, or Arkansas.
Mm.
Right? And you truly get this idea, or this reality, that no one seems to care. Right? So I just want to go back real quick to get on the the historical concept of it before I stick into our more current issues that I find, because I even believe that you have white feminists who also took over the Me Too movement, but I'm gonna get to that in a minute. Right?
Mm.
So when we think about feminism, we all like to start with Seneca Falls. We talk about Susan B. Anthony, but I want to note that when we think about our good old sister Sojourner Truth, right, that she was also the true representation of what I would call like planting those seeds and being the origins of what I would call Black feminism,
Yeah.
right? Because when we ask that question, ain't I a woman too? That
Mm.
goes back to where she's already saying, y'all saying all this feminist stuff and all that, but wait, y'all not even acknowledging my humanity because you have me enslaved at this time, but also, ain't I a woman? Going back to the intersectionality of what it means and what it means to be Black and what it means to be a woman, how that has been ignored by traditional feminist thought. So I want to say that, when we think about the Black feminist tradition, that it grows not out of other movements, but out of the condition of being Black and woman.
Mm.
Because feminism focuses mostly on just, hey, womanhood, but let's just be clear: white
Right.
feminism, white
Right.
womanhood. Black feminism, hey, I'm Black and I'm woman, because you're not even taking into account. And then even during this time, when we think about the seeds of feminism, Black women are not even seen as human yet. So we're
Mm.
trying to get our humanity and get our womanhood acknowledged at the same time. right? And let's not forget, and of course, this is, definitely a different conversation, but it still ties two in the same. Even black men who were once enslaved got the right to vote before white women, right?
Mm,
So that right there shows you the power of patriarchy, right?
mm,
Right. And then once black men had the right to vote before white women, you think she was an ally? Oh no, that was when she started racial stereotyping black men more so, right? So
mm,
understanding that when we talk about black feminism, it's not a rejection of feminism. It's calling out feminism for, hey, you are not thinking about us as black women, right? Like, hey, we have to understand that black feminism lies in this tradition to resist, you know, this idea of the singularity of what it means to be human and what it means to be woman. No, we have to make sure that we understand that to be black, to be woman, that black feminism itself is characterized by its multi-dimensional approach to liberation, because we have women issues, but then let's be clear, we have some racial woman issues too, right? So in 1864, you have, Sojourner Truth and her activism, and you have her, slogan, I quote, I sell the shadow to support the substance. Truth was able to capitalize off of her words, and she was able to support herself and do her speaking tours during this time, just wanting to acknowledge that. But also, her being able to claim ownership to her words, to her image, to earn a living. That in itself was revolutionary, right? So when you think about Sojourner Truth and her contribution to this, and when she stated, quote, I used to be sold for other people's benefit, but now I'm selling myself for my own.
mm.
We never heard white women having to deal with this type of stuff, right? Because it
Right.
was understood their place. So when we think about expressions of black feminism, we also have to understand how it can be seen in written and oral accounts all the way back to the 1830s.
Mm,
The 1830s, right? And I'm gonna, hail this sister, hold her up high for, Women's History Month. But around here we talk about black women, right? We talk about black men because it's about us every month of the year, I feel, right? But
right.
she is the most known and should be known as the black feminist foremother, right? Ever since she
Mm,
asked that question, hey, ain't I a woman too? That was her challenging these ideas and ideologies of feminism from the very beginning. And throughout her life, she linked this movement to the abolishment of slavery, to secure women's rights, black women's rights, stating that for black women, race and gender cannot be separated. Right. So
mm,
Sojourner Truth was talking about intersectionality before Kimberly Crenshaw, came here with
right.
this thing, right? So she was already talking about this. And what I love about this is that when you think about Sojourner Truth's speeches and her activism, that it not only represents the black feminist tradition, but even in all her broken dialect, it is an intellectual, artistic, philosophical, activist practice grounded in our lives as black women, in our lived experiences, right? So people could look at it as being broad, because it has to be, because to be black, to study Africana studies, that in itself is intersectional. Black thought, black religion, black politics, right? Black, like you cannot study anything and not have that black aspect of it. But then also understanding that we have to understand that people tend to talk about feminism in the singular when it can't be, right? Like even as a scholar, I refuse to identify with feminism, but I also understand that there's a certain kind of feminism for women who wasn't really concerned with the freedom and liberation of all women, right? And
Mm,
even my good sister, Dr. Angela Davis, shared those same sentiments, because I remember reading the interview with her a while back where she was like, "Hey, I'm not going to identify as a feminist simply because I know that those women were not thinking about me and my lived experiences as a black woman." So understanding
mm,
that when we talk about black women's experiences, you cannot separate racism, sexism, and classism. You can't. You just can't. Go ahead.
Let me jump in, Doc. Boy, that's you gave us a lot right there. I
Yeah.
wanna
Told you I was
touch
jumping
on.
right in.
Yeah, yeah, you a 0 to 100 real quick, in the words of the great philosophical musician Drake.
Yes.
Um, but I wanted to jump in, and I wanted to talk because you touched on a few things. And I took a few notes here. When we look at um, the history of white women in the United States in particular, there's a book by Stephanie Jones Rogers. They were her property, right?
Mm.
She
Yeah.
talked about
Yes.
how white women would inherit, right? Because technically they were not able to own or purchase enslaved Africans, but they would inherit them from their fathers or their
Mm-hmm.
husbands, and how they would lease them out to
Yes.
make money, and how they were just as cruel as their masters, as the white male masters. Then we move into Elizabeth Cady Stanton,
Woo.
right?
Yes.
This woman's suffrage movement, and the argument that I don't think that many people understand. So you mentioned that black men were given the right to vote before
Mm.
white women, and that
Correct.
was on paper, not in practice, right?
Correct.
Black men and black people in general were not in the United States were not allowed to fully exercise their right to vote until the 70s, right? We have the Civil Rights Acts, the Voting Rights Act of
Mm.
65, 64, and I think 68. Let me not embarrass myself by quoting the wrong dates, but these are in the
Mm.
60s. So it was not until the 70s that we were fully able to actually exercise our right to vote. And some would say that we're still not today with
Exactly. I was
the
going to say
closing
you
of
still
polls
can't
in
fully exercise.
Georgia. Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. So, but Elizabeth Cady Stanton made the argument to white men on behalf of white women that you need to give us the right to vote. If not, we will have basically what she said was we will have black savages, men ruling over us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, inherent in the idea of white feminism or feminism is white supremacy and racism, because it is formulated in a context in which white people are still thinking that they are superior and that black people are inferior.
Mm-hmm.
Um, 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 the plantation politics. I want to step back to
Mm-hmm.
that when we talk about they were her property.
Yeah.
We often hear about, and you mentioned it, the women were being raped. We don't hear about that conversation about the sexual exploitation of black male bodies
Ooh, because
on
they was being
on these
raped too. You see,
plantations. Right.
but we don't want to talk about that because he wasn't just being raped by the woman. Oh, Master was raping black men too.
And this is see, and this is a disturbing history, and a lot of black men we don't ever want to talk about being sexually exploited,
Correct.
right? But there's this vicious history of this, and how white women never. So let's leave them alone. Let me ask you this:
Uh-huh.
what is the difference between feminism and womanism?
Mm-hmm. So let's go from here, right? So when we think about feminism, we think about the needs and the advancement of white women, right? Now, even though they say all women, let's be clear, we're talking white women, right? We're talking about women who are sitting at a certain proximity to their husbands, their middle and upper class husbands, and they want equal access, right? Now, their issues are not like black women, and then we're gonna jump to black feminism, right? Where it's like, hey, can I even be acknowledged as a person first before we start talking about you having access to school and education and work and politics and all this like your husband? As a woman that you're saying this is for true womanhood and all of this, can I even be seen as a human? And then in my struggle and battle to be seen as a human, now I have to be seen as a woman, right? Because again, going back to that cult of true womanhood, I don't check the boxes of all what it means to be a woman. So when we think about feminism and black feminism, we think about the advancement of white women, then black feminism, the advancement of black women, right? So we have white women issues, we have black women issues, and they are very much separate. When we get to womanism, womanism is inclusive of black men, right? Hey, I
Ooh,
understand
come
that
on,
as
let's
a
talk.
black woman, we have issues. Yes,
Talk.
uh-huh. I understand that as a Black woman, we have our issues. And yes, there are some issues dealing with gender that we must identify as. However, we have to think about this intersectional. We are not just women, we are Black women. So there are some issues that we have to deal with in solidarity as a race with our brothers, right? So when we get to womanism, we're talking about full freedom and liberation for Black men and Black women. But then we still got to deal with these, issues of, shall I say, Black patriarchy that exists in our own communities, right? And we know that that patriarchy came into our communities, and I'm going to say it like this: it's not to give the brothers a pass, but you pick up what you learn. We have been several hundred generations removed from our ancestors, and in our quest, and when I say our quest, I'm talking about Black men, right? Because Black women, we are part of this journey with you. Hey, what is a man? How does manhood look? What's the
Right.
role of a man? The only example you have is that white man on the plantation who does everything, provides everything, calls all the shots, right? So then now Black men over time have accepted and adopted that, oh, manhood looks like this. So not only do we accept what white men see as manhood and bring into our communities, we also accept the treatment of white men of their women, and in turn treat our women that way, which goes to an issue that we have in the Black community, because we have Black men who say, hey, as a man, we supposed to do A, B, C, and D, and as a woman, you're supposed to do E, F, G, and do all this. But if we going back to how we say manhood is supposed to be, many Black men, unfortunately, cannot check those boxes as a sole provider, as a sole authoritative figure in the home, if he's in the home. And let's be clear, most Black men are not in the home by choice. We have systemic issues that have intentionally taken our brothers out of the home. Let's acknowledge that, right? Because I'm not about to just sit up here and act like our brothers just choose not to be in the home. No, that has been a systemic issue too, right? Even when we think about, well, no, all Black men not in jail, all Black men not in trouble. No, we have some brothers that's doing well, that's choosing not to be home. Excuse me. I'm still going to go back to the psychological and mental enslavement that those brothers are dealing with as well, that they are unaware of, right? So I just want to make sure that we understand that, because in no way do I ever want to bash our brothers, because we need y'all in this quest for freedom and liberation, which is what we're talking about with womanism now, right? Understanding that we have issues as a race that we got to work together. And we can't get there to true freedom and liberation if we're just focusing on Black women's issues or Black men's issues. We need to come together. But there have been some barriers that have been stopping us from doing that because of patriarchal views that exist within the Black community.
Come on, let's talk about it.
Come on, let's talk about it.
No. You have.
Oh, okay. I'm like,
I'm just.
come on, let's talk
I'm
about it, right?
amen. And you know, I come from the Black church.
Yeah, amen, right? So, but here's the issue with that, though. Here's the issue that comes for Black women with womanism too. We can never choose ourselves. And you just heard me earlier say that I don't speak in all inclusiveness. But being a Black woman, I am seen as selfish or a sellout if I only focus on issues that benefit me, that I need to focus on so I could be healthy to help the overall community. But I have to choose either my woman issues or my race issues. And if I say, hey, I need to focus on this for me, then all of a sudden I'm not worried about the advancement of the race. So that goes back to the intersectional being, right? Like our multi-dimensional selves are not even acknowledged within the Black community, because we could either focus on women's issues or Black issues. And damn it, if we choose women's issues, now we leaving the whole race out. And then that's a whole taboo, because as Black women, which we talked about last month, we are expected to be mothers of the community. We are expected to be there for everyone else. Right, going back to this bridge called my back. Everybody else could ride my back and roll and walk across my back to get to freedom and liberation. But then, as a Black woman, at the end of the day, I'm damn tired because I have taken care of everybody else but myself, and that's the expectation.
Yeah. So I want to ask a few questions, because this is an interesting dialogue. You brought up earlier the ideals of womanhood, right? Being clean and this, that, and the third. And so we hear this podcast echo chamber of black men and black women going back and forth, and you need to, black men must be the sole provider, and going 50-50 versus, man. And I say, well, what history do you Negroes read where black men and black women both haven't worked outside of the home? Remember, we were slaves, right? And after slavery, Big Mama and Papa was cleaning white people houses and working in their yards, right? We have always the black family has all the men and women have always worked outside of the home. It's always been a need for a two-income family just for us to meet the poverty standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting that you mentioned that we have taken on this white patriarchal idea of masculinity, right? And so when I hear these brothers parroting this white patriarchy, I know that they're not in touch with their roots. They don't understand the conditions from which African Americans derive. We are the children of slaves. We are the children of the help. Remember the movie The Help? That's
Mm-hmm.
us. That's us. We are the help. And black women will cook it. They will, and as you mentioned, they would have to do all of this stuff and then come home and try to be a wife, then come home and try to be a mother if they had the energy to do
Yeah.
such. But it's interesting that oftentimes it is framed that, black, as you said, black women have to choose between race and gender.
Yes.
And my question is uh, the converse, right? Or the inverse. What issues are specifically for black men, right? Do not black men have to also make this decision between race and gender? Because I look at the Black Lives Movement, right? Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
What was done, in my opinion, was the bodies of black men were used as a stepping stone to create conversations around all sorts of other issues. But the question is, what issues were specifically about black men? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
not just black men who are being murdered by the police.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just black men who are being overly incarcerated. In fact, the fastest growing incarceration demographic is black women, right? So, what are the specific black male issues that we somehow, how can I phrase it? It is often phrased as if black men or black, let me rephrase, let me back up. It is phrased as black women have to choose between gender and race. And
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely understand that, because being a part of an oppressed class of people, you have two separate fights. But then black men have a two separate fights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't we agree with that? That black men also have another fight, that what are our specific gender politics specifically for black men? Because
Mm-hmm.
all of the politics in the black community, none of them are black men gender specific. They're either
Mm-hmm.
for all of the black community or they're for black women. Is that making sense?
Yes, yes. Now I'm with you a little bit, but I gotta push back on some stuff, right? Because
Go ahead. Go ahead.
when we think about manhood, that itself is solidified. What it means to be a man, and that is not questioned. That is not questioned, right? Like what it means to be a man. You are a provider, you are a protector, right? You are a leader of the family. And if you want to throw religion in there, which, oh Lord, is a whole nother talk when we talk about black folk and religion, right?
Mhm.
You you lead your family in righteousness, right? We understand what manhood is. Now, this whole thing about womanhood, right? When we going back to what it means to be a woman, and when we go back to the cult of what it means to be domestic, right? This cult of true womanhood, right? When we think about piety, right? It is a duty of respect. As a woman, you are to respect your man. No one has ever questioned that about manhood. And it's the expectation of all men, regardless of race. You are to respect your husband. You have the issue, like we look at people crazy when they challenge their husbands in public and stuff like, oh no, you should have did that at home. You don't do that out in the public. Oh no, you don't do that, right? When we think about purity, a woman is supposed to keep her body clean and to herself until her husband, right? It's for her husband. That's not an expectation of men. Again, because it's an expectation that men, hey, be fruitful and multiply. The good book says that, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
think about what it means to be domestic. You cook, you take care of the kids, you take care of your husband. Even if you tired all day from your work, from the cooking, from the cleaning, and then not today, Black women got to go to work, which that wasn't a traditional role of women back in the day. So I'm gonna get to that in a second too, to talk about how we get here with our perspectives of womanhood and who's supposed to be doing what, right? But you cook, you clean, you keep the house up, you make sure the laundry done, everything for when your husband gets home, right? And when he gets home, even after you've been doing all that stuff all day, the kids need to be clean because he needs to come home and see his house in order. And you too, after doing everything you've been doing all day, you need to go throw some damn lipstick on too, because you need to be presentable for him all day after you've done all what you've done all day. And then even after at night, after you have fed everybody, after you have put everybody to bed, after you have washed up and cleaned up from the day, you still need to roll over because your husband expects you to, right? That's what it means when we talk about being domestic. And then now we go to this submissiveness. What it means to be submissive to your husband, to honor your husband. Even when we get married today, what it says, to love and honor your husband, but they don't say that for the wife, right? So when we go to the roles and expectation of what it means to be a woman versus a man, we're talking two different ideologies here, right? We would it's two different rules, two different ideologies. Now, what has gotten us off track in terms of Black women and Black men and this idea of manhood and womanhood, because what I just gave you was the Eurocentric perspective, right? And remember, that's all we had to go by after being several generations removed from our ancestors on the continent, right? So all we had to go by is what we knew for manhood and womanhood based off that. Now, you have Black men, our brothers, who go by this idea of manhood and womanhood and the roles. But guess what? Back in the day, the white women, they did not have to work. The expectation was these four things that I just laid out to you in terms of the roles of a woman. But if a Black woman has to work, if a Black woman has to provide, if a Black woman also has to do all of these things and to protect and to take care of the community and to be again, I'm going to say it, to have her back used as a bridge for everyone, Black men still have the expectation of her to be submissive, to be domestic, to be pure, to be submissive, piety, all this. And it's like, how? You want us to follow this traditional roles of womanhood, but yet I'm having to also take on some of the traditional roles of manhood. And then I also got to validate your manhood, even though you can't check all the boxes. Right? So that's what we really need to make sure that we're talking about here. So now Black women are blamed as, oh, you cut my, Johnson off. Oh, you emasculating me. Right? And then now it's like, well, where's the fairness in that? But then again, if we take up for ourselves, we are seen as not being in solidarity with the race.
Absolutely. So I want to so if as we look at the development of Black American womanhood, right? It comes from being a group of people who were dehumanized, right? We had to, Henry Clay said we were 3/5 of a people. Does that not apply to the Black man also, in terms of actually gaining humanity? So aren't many of the same challenges that you just spoke about, fitting into these traditional gender roles, are they not the same challenges that Black men face? When we are asked to be providers, when we are asked to be protected, it's one of the most curious things to me that we hear this phraseology often, that and people quote Brother Malcolm, that Black women are the most unprotected women in the world, right, or in the country. And the problem I understand the sentiment, but the problem I have with that is that we are an oppressed group of people. And the definition of oppression is the inability to have the agency to defend oneself. We are all part of that group, men and women. So it is kind of strange that we say we're unable to protect, Black men are unable to protect Black women, and then at the same time admit that we're an oppressed group. How can
Mhm.
you how can we have that expectation? It would
Okay.
be so
Great.
go
Okay.
ahead, jump in.
I got you. So I'm gonna say two things here. First, black men, and when we talk about the criminality of black men, the dehumanization of black men, that's been from the jump. And as I started off, it was white feminism who also started this criminality of black men. Because now, hold on, because patriarchy is so strong, and my husband see the necessity to try to give you more rights for my advancement before me. Oh no, I have to make you out to be the devil. I have to make you out to be a beast, right? And that's where we get to, we have Birth of a Nation. We have
Birth of
this,
a Nation, right?
we have these depictions of animalistic, like when you go look at the old school King Kongs, and you look at the colors and the imageries of African features of things that represented bestiality and whatnot, right? Like all of this is attacks on the black man to criminalize him. Because one thing, what I say all the time, and some people challenge, but I don't see how they can. When we look at white supremacy, one of the major goals to, or things that is a necessity to maintain white supremacy, is to protect that white woman in her womb. And in order to protect that white woman in her womb, you have to criminalize anything that's not white that could enter that womb and start creating other races, right? So let's start there. Now, the issue that we have in the black community in relation to this whole what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, and all this stuff that I named, we did not define those terms ourselves.
That's my point.
We took Eurocentric ideologies of womanhood and manhood, and who said that this is a man? Who said that this is a woman? We are the only group of people that take Eurocentric measures of success and use it to measure our own success for everything. How does that work and we not stay oppressed?
Right. And then we wonder why we fail trying to superimpose Eurocentricity on an African mind and on an African body. Right.
Exactly.
So I think that the real crisis is in identity, right? Right. We have a crisis of identity because we are trying to be black men. Basically, we're trying to be white men in blackface. And in many ways, black women are trying to be white women in blackface because the gender roles have been defined by Eurocentricity. So
Exactly.
we have to create a new identity. I think Alan Locke talked about the new Negro, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was in the 20s. We now have to have a new Negro,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Yeah.
one that is now defining ourselves for ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
not through the prism of Eurocentricity. And then
Yeah.
the question becomes, Doctor, how do we do that?
Exact. And I don't want to ask the question, are we capable? Because as black people, let me tell you, we are some of the most brilliant, but we have to take into consideration the the strong impact of socialization, the strong impact of what we're used to, and oh, that's just how it is. It's gonna take generations to break this thought of manhood, womanhood. Hell, we could even go to what it means to be successful. Who told you you got to have a college degree? Who told you you got to have a house with a picket fence? Who told you you got to have this car? Right? Again, we use our oppressors' measurement of success for everything for our own lives, and wondering why we still oppressed. Wondering why we
Right.
still gotta live up to their standards to be accepted when we just need to create our own standards of success. Like I tell my,
Doc,
okay, man, like, come on.
Doc, we even use our oppressors' measure of civilization to define what is civilized,
And if
right?
we
Here's a
really
group
know
of
our
people
history, we would know that our oppressor himself is not even civilized, because to do the things you've done to me, you yourself are the savage, sir.
cannot be civilized. Right, right,
Right.
exactly.
Let's go back to Aimé Césaire right there, right? Discourse on colonialism. How can you say you trying to
Right,
colonize me and civilize me, but yet the things you're doing to me proves that you, sir, are the one that's savage? Because how can one person do this to another human being?
exactly, exactly, Doc.
But also understanding too, and even though yes, we have to have this solidarity, which is why I love womanism, but I also do identify as an Africana womanism, because I understand that so when we think about feminism, black feminism and womanism, think of that as being American ideologies. But when you throw that Africana womanism on there, that's understanding that
Mm,
black people as a global have this experience, and that globally as black people, we need to have racial solidarity, gender solidarity as black men and black women globally. Understanding that even if you choose to put Afro Latina, Afro Mexican, whatever you choose to put in front of your name, how you identify, we are black people globally. We just speak different dialects.
mm. So,
Right?
Doc, let me ask you this. When we talk about, because you bring up an interesting point, because the issues and concerns of, and we talked about this before we jumped on camera, right? These varying groups of Africans, right? Africa, 53, 54 countries, with different cultures, different languages, different dialects, different practices. Many have different faith beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say that American, like when we look at feminism, black feminism, and womanism, this is really an American kind of paradigm, right? How do women find intersection with the African continent, with women who may have different values, different ideas of what's traditional, different definition of what's feminine, and different definitions of what femininity may be, different definitions of gender roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not maybe being a traditional woman in terms of the Western world, staying in the house, maybe that is um, uh, a plus for some women on the continent, right? Right. How do we, number one, find the intersection? Two, not try to superimpose our Western created ideas of masculinity and femininity on a different group of people, or culturally different group of people. And I say that to say, in like many Muslim households, and we know that many of our brothers and sisters here on the continent are Muslim. In many Muslim households, there are clearly defined gender roles based on Arab patriarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Based on Islamic patriarchy, or Islamic theology, really. But many Muslim women appreciate that paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
We may say, "Oh no, that's the," but Muslim women are not, Quranically, they don't have to work, right? Men are supposed to provide.
Mm-hmm.
When Muslim men marry a Muslim woman, we give an Islamic dowry. That's money for that woman in case there's ever a divorce, right? So there are certain traditions and practices that may seem foreign to us,
Mm-hmm.
that other women in other cultures may embrace, that may seem contradictory to the feminist cause, as contextualized in the American context.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
So, in order for us to truly have solidarity, I'll repeat one thing that I said earlier is that when we think about black women globally, we have to understand that racism, sexism, classism, you can't separate that. Now, understanding that our needs as black women globally, we're going to have different worldviews, and that our worldviews are distinct from black men and white women globally. So once we understand that, we have somewhere to go. Now, thirdly, there should be no contradiction between struggle against racism, sexism, and all other isms that you could think of. And we have to address all of them simultaneously. It can't be this one, then this one, because now you're trying to rank and put our oppression in hierarchy, and you can't do that. No, we have to lay out what's what and address it all at the same time. That's how you get there, right? Understanding that, in the black community, we have this saying, we lift as we climb. Truly understanding what this means, right? Lifting as we climb. And also those of us who identify as middle class, upper class black women, we have to check ourselves too, right?
Mm,
Because we have also adopted some of our oppressors lingo and norms and treatment of other black women, and we make them feel less than. And I said that earlier, right? It's like all of us have an experience where we have had to prove ourselves not only to a white woman, but also a sister has made us feel less than. Like
Mm.
we really have to make sure that we understand that, and we have to understand that when we talk about elevating poor women and our poor, sisters, that it needs to be not of goodwill, but more that a recognition that us sisters, that Black women of any class on any continent, we need to understand that without resources, there are a lack of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Because
And
we can't
go
separate
ahead.
capitalism. No, but we can't separate how capitalism impacts our struggle too, right? Like white people have always been a part of our journey towards freedom because we didn't have the money or the resources.
Right.
So when we gonna start supporting each other, especially as Black women, but understanding that we cannot shun each other. We cannot shun each other, and that is something that has happened.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to go back to so I thought of an example of something. Um, um, about 10, 15 years ago, there was a big discussion about East African female genital mutilation, is what they would call it, right? Right? And Western women saw this practice as horrible. And there was this big movement to end it. But what they didn't do was talk to East African Black women about this. I don't think the terminology is even mutilation anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what they found that when they actually spoke with the women, they said, wait, no, we like this practice. It is our culture, and we're not interested in changing this culture, right? So there we found a divergence from traditional American feminist ideas that this is a problem, right? And the women in East Africa were saying, no, we want this. This is part of our culture. We appreciate this tradition. And secondly, the women who were actually doing the surgeries, right? Well, it was a part of their income. So now the approach was, okay, can we find a safer way to do this? Can we find the best practices to do this? And that's I think my point is like sometimes that it happens even with Black Americans who come to the continent, right? We want to kind of impose what we think is right onto the continent. And we have to guard against that the same way we have to guard against it when it comes to like the ideas and understanding of gender and its application in the world in a different context. What you may see as a problem, everybody may not see as a problem.
But that goes back to what I said about having an understanding of different worldviews, right?
Right.
Understanding that we cannot define oppression for other brothers and sisters. Now, this also makes me think of this image that I like to show my students when we start classes, and I'm talking about this idea of oppression and us not taking oppression from another group or trying to define it. It's this cartoon image of an American woman in a swimsuit. I'm talking about she, bam, right? And then she's looking at this Muslim sister covered up in everything. And
Yes.
they both telling each other, oh my gosh, she's so oppressed.
Yes.
Right?
That's a
Understanding that
perfect example.
you have the freedom to show your body and do all that. But another question I ask my students, when we think about the looking glass self, and when we think about how we see ourselves in the image of other people in terms of how they see us, you have to ask yourself, when you get up in the morning and you getting dressed and you looking in the mirror, who are you really looking in the mirror for? Because we like to lie and tell ourselves, oh, I think I'm look good. I'm getting dressed for me. But truth of the matter is you looking in that mirror to see what other people, hey, you're looking at yourself one last time to see how other people will see you, to see if they would think what you're thinking, because you need them to validate your thoughts, right? So understanding how, we think we have all these freedom because I could show my body if I want, and I could just shake my ass and do all this, and oh, I'm free. I'm doing this for me. And then we looking at our sisters who practice, Islam faith, and it's like, oh my gosh, she has to cover up. Oh my gosh, she's so oppressed. But we looking at each other, realizing that, hey, because it is a belief that Muslim women cover up their bodies because it's that's only for your husband to see, which I can understand that, but you see how we have a lack of understanding from the Western side of their perspective and worldview of what that truly means. right?
Mm,
To honor one's body. We don't get to define how that looks like for another person. And that's something
right.
else I tell my students. We cannot define what freedom looks like for other people. That is an individualized definition that we have to decide for ourselves. What is
Mm,
freedom for me? Right?
mm,
Now, we understand that we have some overarching goals here. Like, hey, as Black people, we need to be able to be free, like have true freedom of speech, have to, have true due process, have true, like, we understand what,
right.
broad freedoms are, but you can't get to decide for me what freedom is, and we cannot judge. And that's what I go back to earlier. As Black women, we tend to shun each other a lot, especially our young sisters who trying to figure it out. At one time, as Black women, we all wore shorts too short. We all, was in, Club Ambrosia at some point back in the day, right? Like, come on now. We all was in Ambrosia back in the day. So just because you figured it out and you got to live a little longer and you was able to learn some things, you ready to shun the sister who's doing the same thing you was doing at her age? Like, I
Mm,
remember my grandma used to tell me, just keep living, baby, you'll figure it out.
yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we are not supporting our young sisters that way. And then we wondering why they're not taking our advice. It's just like
Mm,
going into church, right? And that's gonna make me bring this up because we talking about traditional manhood and womanhood here, understanding that queerness is also a part of our tradition as Black people. And that when we think about queer Black feminism, right? Queer womanism, queer Africana womanism, understanding that our queer brothers and sisters have always been a part of this struggle too, right? And that's another conversation that we don't want to deal with because we feel like, oh no, that's a whole nother issue we got to fight. Let's just deal with our issues on, making sure people see us, see us in our humanity and that they see us as Black men and Black women. We don't want to deal with that queer stuff now. Well, guess what? We will never have true solidarity because they've been a part of this journey too.
absolutely. I always say, you can't put all the gay Black people out of the church because who's gonna play the organ? Who's gonna direct
Boy,
the choir?
boy, listen. But we have to tell the truth though, right? But then going back to what we said earlier about that plantation life, queerness has been a part of it.
Mm.
Queerness has been a part of it. Even when we go back on the continent, queerness has been a part of it.
Yeah, that's and that's a complex and nuanced conversation. Right now in Ghana, they have proposed a law, anti-LGBTQ law, and um, from our Western perspective, we're saying, oh, that's wrong. But again, and I'm not taking a stance either side of it, right? I support all Black people, whether you're gay, straight, trans, or whatever have you. That it is about the liberation of all Black people. However,
Mm,
a sovereign nation has a right to create laws to maintain this. As a sovereign nation, they have a right to create laws that they feel best fit within their cultural paradigm. So, that becomes a tricky situation, and then you start playing. You start mixing religion and faith practices into it, and that is a very nuanced conversation that Black people do need to have because homophobia has done so much damage, right, to the Black community.
yes,
I think that James Baldwin, besides
that's father right there. I love
yeah,
me some James Baldwin. That's
right,
father right there, man.
besides I'm blanking on the brother's name, the Wretched of the Earth.
France Fanon.
Besides France Fanon, I think that James Baldwin is the greatest example of Black genius
Ooh,
ever
yeah,
created. But it was
yeah.
homophobia. It's
Giovanni's room.
homophobia that I'm sorry, say it
Giovanni's
again.
room. Giovanni's room. He put it out there.
Right. I think that it is homophobia that has has really dimmed the light of Baldwin, and especially in Black America. We
Mm-hmm.
talk about Bayard Rustin and the genius organizer that he was. Many people just learned of Rustin's name because of a Netflix movie, and that's sad because homophobia has made us place him in the shadows. And when you do that, you're placing the genius of a man in the shadows, not just his sexuality. You see what
Yes,
I'm saying?
yes.
Um,
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, so that is a very nuanced conversation. On the flip side of it, on the flip side of it, as those who may be practicing Muslims or those who may be members of the a more conservative Christian outlook, right? There becomes this conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I reconcile embracing that which my religion, right, my God defines as a sin or as a problem, right? So there has to be a real serious conversation. Now, I've reconciled it by saying liberation first,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Liberation first, and we'll argue about all the other stuff later,
Yeah.
right? Let us get free
See, but why
first.
argue? But here it is. But why argue? And I know we about to run low on time, and we still got questions. It's fine. I don't mind staying extra 5 or 10 to hit questions from the audience. But we 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 praise Alice Walker. We praise Audre Lorde, but do we really know what they were saying, right? Like when you think about, and if y'all have not read the Combahee River Collective put together by Barbara Smith, go ahead and read that. But then when we think about Alice Walker and understanding that when she said her term womanist, and it wasn't to necessarily just describe a black feminist or a feminist of color, it was more of what it truly means to be human, an expression of feminism that also acknowledged queer black women, and understanding that when we talk about Audre Lorde, Sister Outsider, right? That we understand that, hey, there are connected issues between sexism, racism, classism, and heterosexism, because what we not focused on is that black women are often taught to be at a disadvantage because of racism and sexism, but understanding that we also have this issue of heterosexism that comes because we talking about this freedom and liberation in heterosexual women's bodies, but we leaving out our queer sisters. And you
Mm,
can't do that, right? Like the struggle for freedom, going back to those different worldviews, you have to be exposed to different forms of oppression, and you got to understand those different forms in order to dismantle them. No oppression
mm.
can be dismantled if it's not understood. So we up here want to talk about how all this work and stuff is done, but are we really paying attention to how we are grounding our work in freedom and liberation in heterosexual black bodies only?
Yeah. Liberation can, if you love black people, liberation can't be for just 75%. I mean, that's a C.
And then we got trans sisters
That's
out
a
here.
C. But
We got trans women, we got trans girls, we got gender non-conforming people. We have to be inclusive of everyone here if we're truly talking about solidarity. But now that goes back to what I said earlier. We got to choose. We're going to deal with our gender issues, or we're going to deal with race. And you see how we're still being forced to have to choose.
yeah, I say that black women are oppressed, black men are oppressed, black gays are oppressed, black lesbians are oppressed, black trans are oppressed. The common thread there is blackness. So let's get this black freedom and liberation struggle out the way.
Yep.
But we have some
And just love
questions.
people for who they are. Just love people for who they are. Why should it matter who somebody's sleeping with? Love them for who
Right,
they, if you truly understand what it means to be human, because that's what we
right.
ain't talking about, right? We ain't talking about what does it truly mean to be human.
Mm. And what does it truly mean to love black people? Because aside from our gay, lesbian, trans brothers and sisters, and some of us who may be Muslim, some of us who may be Christian, may find it hard based on not even their lifestyle, based on their sexuality, to love
Mm-hmm.
them, right? But
Mm-hmm.
we also got to love the criminal, right? I know black folk who's murderers, who's thugs, who's drug dealers, right? And if you
Yep.
love black folk, you have to love them too, right? And love them enough to pull them out of the criminality, right? Love
See,
them
but
enough to
I'm
even
gonna
see
say
the
this one last thing. I'm gonna say this one last thing because we saying the word love a lot too, but also
mm,
understanding what love is, because we tend to say like for example, I I will argue we grew up using that term wrong. And I'm going to use an example with myself. I would say, I love crawfish. But then again, if you love something, it can't just be something that's beneficial to you. We love things because of how it makes us feel, because of what it does for us. But if you truly understand what love is selfless, right? Love, like you can love a person and they may want to do something that hurts you and it has no benefit to you. But if it's something that's good for them, if you love them truly, you would be okay with it and let it go. So then now we get to understanding
Oh
what love
man,
is. Because
Doc,
love is
that's gonna be our next because we got to talk about love because I got my issues and strain. I mean not issues. I think that our presentation and understanding of love, particularly romantic love, is only
with
about
black
200
people.
years old.
Let's get to
Right? No,
some bell hooks, right? Bell hooks, all about love, but truly understanding that love is supposed to be something that does not truly benefit us. Because when you truly love, like what they say, if you love a flower, don't pick it, you leave it alone and you let it grow. But you want that flower so badly, right? You see, but we only love when it benefits us.
and I think we need to understand what love really because I'm gonna go ahead and we'll get to the thing. I think love is an emotion just like any emotion. It could be, we always say your feelings are valid, can be false, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy teaches us that what we feel may not necessarily be the reality, right? And love is a feeling and it's fleeting. Sometimes it can be false, right?
But it's
And so we
more
have
than
to have something. We have, huh?
it's an action more than a feeling, though. I will argue because we could feel all we want, but my action has to show that I love you because I have let you go. I have let you live. I have let you do what you wanted to do, even though it doesn't benefit me and it hurts me.
Mm.
Love, you know
Well,
what I'm saying? You
then
love is
I don't know
vulnerable.
if that's love though. I don't know if you doing something is going to hurt me if that's love. But
See,
let's set aside
because if
a
we
time
talk
that we
about
can have.
freedom and liberation, hey,
But
it's
I think we gotta get a clarity on the definition of what we mean by love because
yeah,
we're right. We throw that word around, right? And many people tell you that love is never enough, right? Everybody that
yep.
walk down the aisles
You
claim
saying
they
you
love
love
that person.
people, and you saying you love black people, but what you're
Yeah,
doing if it don't benefit you? Yes, it is an inconvenience to be out here marching all the time. It is an inconvenience sometimes to have to sit and just write when I'd rather be doing something else. But because I love black people, it's the sacrifice.
well, it really starts with me because I love me and I'm black. So I'm gonna work for black
Mm.
people because I love them. Yeah, that's where it
Woo!
starts.
But that's
Let's
another
let's get to
conversation.
these
We gotta love our blackness too. We have to
right.
love our blackness.
So we got some comments. One brother, Geechee Dan, who is also from New Orleans, shout out to the 504. He says that welfare back in the 60s required black men not to be in the home. And this is something that was repeated by Candace Owens yesterday on the Breakfast Club. And it's important because social workers at one time were trained to look for what they call the shoes under the bed, right? They would go into a sister was receiving welfare from the government. They would go into the house and they would actually lift up the covers on the side of the bed to make sure there were no male shoes in the house, right? So he's making an important point about how governmental systems played a part in removing black men. My response to that is that if you make that baby son, you need to take care of it. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
If you're begging you, it ain't the
But
government
but
job to take
but
care of that
but
baby.
but we do have to acknowledge that the government has intentionally done things to take brothers out of the home, right? Especially when we think
Yeah,
about crack. Especially when we think about going back to our perceptions of white women, because black men, no, you know what? Let me not be all inclusive right there. Some black men have also been sold on this reality that as sisters, we are not truly the definitions of womanhood and that you don't want us, right? Because once you have certain laws that was passed and you was able to legally be with that white woman, you have some that went and left, and that wasn't a form of hate or anything. That goes back to that socialized mindset, right? Believe, like we used to joke around being younger. I remember joking like, oh Lord, he's successful, he gonna go get him a white woman,
yeah.
right?
But you remember the Kenneth B. and Mamie Clark, because we always forget the sister, there's wife. Mamie
Yeah.
Clark doll experiment, right?
Oh,
That
yeah.
doll experiment is powerful because we're talking about babies and some of the questions, what doll do you see as beautiful? And they pick up that white doll. What
Yep.
doll do you see is good? And they pick up that white doll. So there are that desire for white femininity, or that inclination for jungle fever is
How
part of
we
a
perceive it.
socialization process, right? Is a
Yep.
part of a social. I heard Dr. Naeem Akbar say, but you know, it is the case when it's the black man, even through all that socialization, 85, 90% still choosing that black woman with the big lips and the big behind, right? So even through all of that, we continue, you know, we can't focus. We understand that the socialization created this kind of inclination. And nowadays, many brothers say it wasn't socialization. I met this woman, fell in love, the same we could say for Serena Williams, right? Who
Yep.
married a white man, right? Or Candace Owens, who
You,
married a
you know,
white
I could never, Candace, I'm just, you know what? I've been
but
over Candace.
hey, but okay, let's get to Eddie Thorne. He says uh, Dan, oh, he's talking about Geechee Dan. Welfare was also meant for people to get off of it after a certain period of time and not to be on it for forever and pass it on to the children unless you're disabled. And that's an interesting conversation. Then he says James Baldwin and Baynard Rustin put gayness, not, I guess he meant on the back burner. They didn't put it out front like they were gay and proud. What do you say to that?
Okay, so the very first part about welfare and whatnot, understanding that American government, they want black people to be dependent. And a part of making sure that we stay dependent upon them is them controlling our finances and economics. And in doing so, hey, you can't get this if you got a man in the house. So now we got to be real smart here to see what they're doing in terms of keeping black families apart, right? But also, why do you need that government assistance? Because now we're thinking about inequality when we come to access to education, access to good jobs, access to quality healthcare, access to all these things, which are very intentional when we think about the systems and institutions that's been put in place in America to keep black people dependent upon them. Because if you're dependent upon me, guess what? I'm doing the same thing as slaves, master. I'm giving you what you need and I'm keeping you right there where I need you, right? And
Mhm.
that's also a form of surveillance, giving you access and enough to stay in this certain community, this certain place, this certain space, because that surveillance is also a part of that control. That surveillance is also how I'm able to continue to criminalize you. That surveillance is how I'm also able to keep you in your place as a black person in America to ensure your status.
Mm.
Okay. Now, when we think about homophobia in the black community, well, hell, why would I come out and put it on display too if I see how y'all treat me while they lynching us? You more worried about who I'm laying up with? Hell, I wouldn't come out either. Let's call it
Mm.
for what it is. Because we have always shunned each other. We have always just been so harsh with each other and not understanding who the true enemy really is, which, hey, it is not me or who I'm sleeping with, right? And
Mm.
that goes back to what we were saying earlier about our worldviews, understanding that regardless of how we view our oppression, we have a common oppressor, and that is white supremacy. And that should be the only thing that we should be focused on. So instead of
Absolutely.
asking, like why they didn't do this, why didn't look at the larger issues here, right?
Mm.
And I will also argue that they didn't want to put that other battle out there, knowing how we have to always again choose gender, race, sexuality, heterosexism. Hey, you know what? The larger issue here, I will argue that they seen was racial solidarity. And they also just didn't want to put their love life out in the open for something else to be criticized when that was not what needed the spotlight at the time.
Right. Right.
Because
Absolutely.
use it.
And the 60s was not the time to be out and proud and black. You just adding all kind of, you gotta pick a struggle. You you can't be picking all them struggles, brother. You gotta pick one and stick with it. But I want to go back to this comment that Eddie Thorne made, and he's absolutely right. Welfare was meant for a small period of time. Here's the problem that I see with welfare. The mass majority of people on welfare currently work 40 hours a week. So while we look at welfare as, oh, these people are getting free money, the bigger problem is that people are working 40 hours a week and can't feed themselves, right? And that is a direct result of capitalism and its greed and inability for corporations and companies to pay people a living wage. So when someone has to get a Section 8 voucher or a housing voucher, right? Because the cost of housing is more than what they make, that is the real problem. Not that a person is trying to get $340 a month on food stamps. And then I'm black and got, I'm black with a lot of ghetto tendencies. So I'll be like, man, get all that free money you could get.
You know, amen. You know, and then when
Get all
really
the
all
free money you can get, my brother.
inflation today, everything is just so high, but also noting that we are not the majority on welfare either.
Uh-oh, I
Like,
missed that. I think my live stream went out for a second.
okay, but also noting that we are not the majority on welfare either.
Right, right,
We are not the
right.
one capitalizing off of government benefits.
Exactly. Exactly. But that's the picture that is painted of the welfare queen, which is another problem for black women, right? Here's another stereotypical racist trope painted of this black welfare queen when it's white women. And then let's not talk about the corporate welfare, all of those subsidies that these corporations get from the government, that's welfare too. But we don't want to talk about that, right?
So
We have to paint a black
bail
woman as the
out,
face,
you know,
huh?
bailing out the banks, bailing out these corporations.
Right. AIG, General Motors, and we ain't seen a dime of that, right? So we
Yep.
we
And
kind
then
of,
you coming back for my people for that little bit of FEMA money you gave them for Katrina.
Um, yeah, I did get that FEMA money, and then I went, yeah, I got me some what you call it, Red Cross money too. Yes, Lord, that's the start of my reparation. That's the down payment on my reparations, baby. That's
Oh, that's a whole nother. Oh, that's definitely another conversation. Reparations, right there.
Doc. It was an absolute pleasure. We're gonna have to make this a monthly thing, right?
Oh Lord.
We can once a month. And maybe we could talk about contemporary issues because I enjoy these conversations. I think that too often academics are trapped in the ivory tower / ebony tower, and everyday people don't hear like the discussions that we're having. And everyday people are having these discussions, right? But we get caught up
Yes.
in, oh, I gotta write this article, I gotta write this, I gotta do this, I gotta present at this panel because I'm a Negro with a PhD,
But it's
right?
real.
And right,
Real. That's
but
life, man. Working on the book now. It's life.
right. Hello, family. Happy belated birthday. Oh, thank you, Miss Edwards. But I think that as just like everyday black people, and I think that's what I love about being from New Orleans and what I love about my people here in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm around a lot of everyday, as Sly Stone described,
Yeah.
everyday people, right? So I think as everyday people, it's great to be involved in these type of conversations. And I know it's interesting because we've had 30 some people watching this entire time. And
Wow.
they're leaving comments. There's small on the comments just saying great conversation someone just put up. But I know that they're interested in these type of conversations, whether it be about gender, whether it be about race. I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about. We could maybe next time we'll talk about this presidential election and the scapegoating. All right, maybe we'll talk about black men next time. The scapegoating of black men by the Democratic Party already is being formulated in case Biden loses. That's my loses. That's my
Well,
idea.
I live in Delaware, so Biden country. So, you know,
Mm.
I definitely hear some interesting conversations here. I actually was at a lunch last week with his sister and the governor's wife. Just interesting conversations. So, we are everyone here is definitely paying attention to this election.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna pay attention to it from over here in South Africa. And I'll be like, ooh, such a shame.
Well, hey, like I already told you, my brother, just let your wife and kids know Auntie Alicia coming, and we're gonna have to definitely have one of these talks in person or something soon.
Absolutely. Doc, it was always a pleasure speaking with you. This was a great conversation. Again, somebody said, yes, we are good to talk and listen to people that look like us. And I think that's also important.
Ashe.
Um, Family, thank you guys for tuning in and watching. And I will be back on my channel with a video with the wife at some point between today and Sunday. So you guys have a great one.
Beautiful. Thank y'all again. Y'all have a good one.
All right. Now I got to figure out how to stop this live stream. There's always an issue. We're just gonna end. All right, Doc, you have a great one.